Good evening, welcome to Minority Caucus. We are tonight considering the case for having free SHS now, or better still, restoring free SHS now, because some have enjoyed it to the point where the government was actually putting sandals on their feet. Let's look at some figures. If we can have table 2 on the screen, we will look at some of the figures that matter in this debate. So let's have table 2. Can we blow it up a bit? Now, the expectation is that in September of 2013-2014 academic year, that's next year, are likely to have 777,000 pupils, students enrolled in SHS. Now, there's this figure of 78,000 that has been bandied about, and we need to clarify that. You can see in the first column, there's a figure up there. If you look at point 1, additional recurrent expenditure, it's bold. 1, additional recurrent expenditure of 796,164 cedis. Now, this covers additional recurrent expenditure on the people who will be in school for the first term only. Only, because government already pays certain expenses. Those expenses will be maintained by government. But the other expenses that government is not paying, that we are going to pick up as well, is what we are calling the additional expenditure for the very first time when we are in the first year of office. And that is 77.7 million, or as was rounded off by some of the media, 78 million. It is just for the additional expenditure on the first term, because there will be expenditures there already. Now, that additional expenditure is breaking down boarding, lodging, day fee at 74 million, and then meals twice a day for day students at 3.7 million. Now, there are other expenditures, capital expenditures, and Nana, will you run us through the capital expenditures?
Yes, the capital expenditures are to improve the infrastructure base that already exists within the senior high school system in Ghana.
Yes.
Bear in mind the fact that we are talking about improving, building 350 new schools, and then improving the already existing stock of infrastructure that we have. Surprisingly, 51% of schools in Ghana do not have toilet facilities. Basic schools in Ghana do not have toilet facilities. About 42% of basic schools in Ghana do not have access to water. So improving all of these things and bringing them to par, we are going to be making some expenditures along that level to ensure that overall quality and access in education are improved. So for that method, we have costed the entire thing and broken them evenly into 4 batches, which means that we expect the entire infrastructure development to be done in 4 years. In that regard, for the year 2013, we are going to be spending 215 million
on capital expenditure.
On capital expenditure for the expansion of the existing senior high schools. And then, for expansion of existing, that is technical and vocational educational institutions.
TVETs.
TVETs.
Yes.
We're going to be spending 58 million.
So the technical and vocational schools are all parts of
the technical
the
and
free
vocational
SHS.
schools are all part of the free SHS.
Thank you.
That post-junior high school education structure,
Yes.
all those things that fall within that post-junior high school
Yes.
to pre-tertiary,
That's right,
are a part of this free SHS policy.
Excellent.
And we are going to be spending 58 million for the expansion of the existing TVET. And then for the provision of school buses that are going to convey the students to and from school, we are going to be spending an additional 25 million.
These are the cluster schools.
These are the cluster
The
schools.
350
Yes.
cluster
schools that
are going to be designed to serve groups of communities.
Yes.
And people will be bussed to the schools back and forth.
Yes. And then we are looking at 378 million for the establishment of cluster schools. So you see, the first ones that I've spoken about, that is expansion of existing SHS, expansion of existing TVET, and provision of school buses. That forms one tranche of it. And then the other tranche of it is the establishment of cluster schools. This forms the totality of the capital expenditure under our program.
So for the first year, if you add the additional recurrent expenditure, you add the capital expenditure of 215 million, the expansion of TVETs 58
all
million,
of that together,
provision of buses 25 million, and then the establishment of cluster schools 378 million. You have a total intended expenditure of 754 million. 754.6 million cedis to be spent in 2013.
We can actually round it off to 775 million to be spent in the year 2013. You move on to the year 2014, you get a total expenditure because of the improvement in the numbers and the grounding of the policy.
Yes.
We are expecting expenditure to increase to 965 million Ghana cedis. And then in the year 2015, which would hopefully be the third year of the policy, again, we're expecting an increase in the numbers. And so it will be 1.194 billion Ghana cedis.
Wow.
And then in the fourth year, we're expecting 1.450 billion Ghana cedis to be spent on this policy. I am therefore personally amazed when, for mischief purposes, certain individuals seek to put out the argument that we are saying that we'll spend a paltry 78 million for the provision of free SHS. That is not true. What they have done, those people that are putting out those figures, what they have done is to take up what we have captured as additional recurrent expenditure. And as you have rightfully explained, this consists of, you see, government is already spending something on SHS systems.
Yes.
So the additional cost that we are going to take up, the little fees that are already being paid, that we are saying that we will absorb over just one term. And this is because governments plan their budgets in a year. So for government planning, November, we are expecting the Minister of Finance will put together a budget that will cover January to December 2013.
That's right.
Now, January to December 2013, there's already an academic year that has begun this September. So when we come to power, inshallah, it will be from September 2013 that a new academic year will begin. But government would have already planned for that year.
That's right.
And so that additional expenditure that we are going to be making will be just for one term, September to December 2013.
That's right.
And it is for the take-up of additional cost in that one term.
That is the 78
That
million.
is the 78.
It's just a minor
It's
part
just
of the intended
minor part of the intended expenditure. And this does not in any way cater for capital expenditure that deals with infrastructure improvement and all of that. Neither does it even cater for the whole year of it. And so those that are seeking to do this, it's pure mischief.
Let's see if table 3 is possible. Let's see if we can look at table 3 and whether we'll have a higher resolution for table 3. That's the overall education expenditure as percentage of GDP and policy as percentage of GDP. So if you look at table 3, 2013, next year, the current expenditure on education overall is 3.697 billion. Yes. And then
our new policy.
Is
754.
628. Yes, so 754. That's the additional expenditure that will be incurred to add to the education budget.
That's right.
So you have a total expenditure of 4.433 billion. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
At that time, our GDP will be
projected at
78.02 billion.
That's right.
Okay. So if you work it 4.433 into 78.02, it will just be 5.7% of our GDP.
Which overall education
yes, we overall education.
5.7.
That's right.
Yes. But so our policy just adds 1%.
1%.
This is what Nana explained at the IE. That our policy will just add 1% more cost to GDP. But overall, the education budget as part of GDP will 5.7%.
Clearly.
In 2013.
Clearly. And this goes to show the commitment that Nana Dankwa Akufo-Addo has towards education in this country. This clearly shows the drive and the zeal that we have to ensure that expenditure is prioritized in favor of education. If you look at the figures again for the year 2014, I'm surprised that it's unfortunate that it has not been able to come.
You go ahead.
But you look at the expenditures again, it is going to increase. The increase of the policy or the implementation of the policy will increase GDP by just 1.1%. That is expenditure of education as a percentage of GDP will be increased by just 1.1%. In the next year, that is 2015, we are expecting it to increase at 1.2%.
An increase of 0.1%.
0.1% in all subsequent years. This is not an expenditure that is beyond Ghanaians.
Indeed.
And that will crash the economy.
The GDP projections are very conservative.
Yes. Yeah.
Considering the kind of expansion in the economy that we envisage.
Yeah.
So the GDP projections of which we are taking these percentages, if the economy expands faster than these projections, then it will even fall below that 1%.
That's right.
You see, you are looking at Ghana that we are expecting that by the year 2016, the rebate, the GDP of Ghana would reach 109 billion. And these are the projections that the government is giving us as at now. That by the year 2016, our economy, the GDP of our economy would reach 109 billion. We are looking at total expenditure on education by then, even when the policy has been implemented, to reach 6.3 billion
In total.
in total. And what is surprising to me is the fact that if an economy, the GDP is 109 billion, and we are supposed to spend 6.3 billion on education, and some people say we can't find the money.
And that will
Then what sort of Ghana will we be living in? You see, as a result of the introduction of this new policy, actually, we are expecting that in 2016, the expenditure as a result of this new policy will be 1.4. So let's again do the mathematics. GDP, we are expecting to be around 109 billion.
Yes.
Expenditure to implement free SHS, we are expecting to be at just 1.4 billion. So if you have 104 billion, and you cannot find 1.4 billion,
You have 109 billion.
And you
and you cannot find 1.45 billion
out of
that is just 1.3% of that money.
If you are not going to spend
if Ghana was to be a private citizen, it will not be even up to our tithe.
No.
yeah,
It's about 1/10 of our tithes. And we cannot afford to spend that on the education of our own citizens. Then what
for the
country
future of
do we live in?
This money is going to even be a multiplier in the economy.
As we
Because
have
in
explained,
investing it in the children, you're actually investing in
the
jobs.
jobs.
You are investing in tax revenues for the government. You are investing in literacy, which will double again the capacity of those individuals to improve the economy.
and all of this goes to feed into the industrialization drive that we have. Because you see, if you don't have a literate citizenry or populace, and you create an industrialized economy, that means you have to import people from other countries to come and take up the jobs that you've created in your economy. Countries like Australia today are having to go through such a crisis, where the jobs exist, but they don't have the manpower, the skilled workforce to take it up, and so they have to import people. Ghana, we are blessed to have such a great vision, and we are saying that it will cost us just about 1% of our GDP to implement this. The fact is that the implementation of this policy in itself will lead to more jobs and more revenues and an expansion of the economy in itself just by implementing this policy. Yes. And then some people are telling us that we can't find the jobs and we'll cripple the Ghanaian economy. My brother, if you are a human being and you cannot spend 1% of your salary on the education of your children, what does that make you?
You are callous.
If as a human being you cannot afford to spend 1% of your salary on the education of your own, how much do we even spend on our cars?
Amazing.
Amazing. It's the whole point to keep the people ignorant so that we can continue to mislead them.
Yes.
It's as simple as that.
Yes.
Okay? So it isn't anything that is not doable. It is absolutely doable. It is feasible. It is practicable. We had even projected, okay? They're talking about, they're putting fear in the people that once you do it free, you're going to have a mass of people coming up. And the system cannot. It has all been projected.
Give us the figures.
The projection for 2013-2014 is 777,000 Okay? And then when our system comes on, to go. No.
It's the same.
In 2014, we are going to abolish the failures.
Yeah, that's right.
BEC level.
Yes. And then everybody come up.
So the normal stream with failures would have been
2013,
823.
yes, 2013, 2015, 2014, 2015. Yes. Okay, we expect that the total school population will be 1.07 million kids. It will be an addition of 83,000. Yes. In 2015, 2016, we expect an addition of 370,840. So as you look at it, it's about doubling the figure, the population figure. The addition that is anticipated. But the fact of the case is that our population growth, we don't increase by what do you call it? 25% per year.
The projections are based on a linear progression.
Yes.
So by September 2016,
yes,
that is the 2016-2017 academic year.
Yes.
Towards the end of the first term, we expect
500.
an addition
yes,
of 550.
By
total enrollment will be 1.4.
Yeah.
And you see, for me,
1.4.
Yeah. So it isn't that the system will be overwhelmed. No, they create the impression that the system will be overwhelmed. So it's going to be choked and all kinds of.
These cost figures, these infrastructure figures, are based on a system that is capable of absorbing 1.4 million children by 2017.
What is interesting to me in all of this, and I think the Ghanaian people deserve to know this, is that these projections didn't just come out of the sky.
No.
I assisted the professors who worked on this document. And I can tell you that we went as far back as 30 years, looked at enrollment figures from 30 years ago, looked at the projections, looked at the fault levels and all of those projections, corrected them, and looked at the government figures, went through them over a period of more than 2 months to come out with these projected figures. And so we know very well that there's, unless of course there's a fundamental flaw somewhere where the government of the day today is lying to us seriously about the figures they are giving out as enrollment figures, these figures will stand the test of time. And so I am amazed. I'm very passionate about this. I'm extremely passionate about this. I'm amazed when individuals come out and attempt to rubbish such a policy. I'm amazed when, for mischief purposes, people want to just take the entire policy, even without considering the basis of the policy, and rubbish it. You know what is interesting? All those who go out and say it is impossible, upon interaction with them, you realize that they themselves don't even know the policy.
They haven't read it.
They have not taken, and I am putting this out there. Anybody who feels they can challenge me on this, call me and let's sit down and let's have a one-on-one debate on this. None of those individuals who is saying that it is not possible has read these figures and knows them, because anybody, any objective person who has Ghana at heart, who feels for the poor population in Ghana, after looking through this, will feel that it is time for me to contribute my quota to make this possible. Sleepless, it is taking more than 2 years to come up with all of these figures and all of these calculations, and so it is a well thought out process. One of the things that they say is that, are we going to have free SHS when there are schools under trees? Clearly, anybody who tells you something like that does not even know that infrastructure has been catered for under the policy. And it is interesting when such people who are ignorant would want to display their ignorance in glory.
See, are you saying that you clear schools under trees in 20 years, so we can't have SHS? Then in the 20 years, those who are coming out and up to that point, what happens?
What I want Ghanaians to see through them is this. Do you remember when Nanano said it? They said it's not possible, it's not feasible, it cannot be done. You remember?
Yes.
Then they use a BBC interview to ridicule him.
Yes.
Now he gets back home, puts the team to work, a report is presented, he gives facts and figures, then they turn and say, where are you going to get the money? He shows them how the money is going to be made.
Yes, right.
Then they turn and come and say, oh, you see, as for free basic education,
it's in the Constitution.
But the definition of basic education from primary to JHS, Nanado say he'll change it and make it SHS.
That's right.
So as it stands now, SHS is not part of our basic education structure.
And you know the fallacy.
Okay, so clearly, these are people who do not know what they want, or they don't see beyond their nose. It's about themselves, okay? So that they can come and always throw anything at the people, throw what mischief, lies at the people,
So there are two issues here in this policy.
Yes.
First of all, there's going to be investment to deliver SHS free.
That's right.
And then secondly, you're telling us that not 2013, but in 2014, we are going to have the extension of basic education
from
JHS to SHS. And so when you enter school, you're going to go all the way
until you finish SHS, you've not finished
SHS.
You've not finished school.
You've not finished school.
That's right.
So there is no possibility of dropping out.
Absolutely.
Because you didn't pass BEC or otherwise.
Yeah.
Because we are saying that everybody ought to stay in school long enough to mature and learn to read and write.
Yeah.
And that an exam will be taken at JHS level.
Yes.
But that exam is not an exam to fail you.
No.
It's an assessment that will help us determine which SHS school you go to and which program you will join, and whether you choose to go to a TVET, that is a training, a vocational institution. Everybody who wears a uniform ought to be leaving an institution of learning after SHS.
That's right.
That is the situation.
That's idea. You see, and you know, that's typical of them. When President Kufuor promised that if he's elected, he will make basic education free, then Professor Mills, a vice president, right? Chairman of the Economic Management Committee or team, and a lawyer, said it is absolutely impossible. Come 2002, 2003, President Kufuor initiates the free basic education. They say, it was a constitutional provision. Didn't they know? So Ghanaians, these are the kind of people who are leading us. They don't have the boldness. They don't have a clue. Okay? They have no purpose for which they came other than inflating figures to line their pockets. That's all they know how to do. But for that, how can you build a primary school who used to be built
at 80,000
or 65,000 under President Kufuor to be constructed at 350,000? What cost for it?
The least any family in Ghana will get from oil money, directly and indirectly, is to ensure that somebody in the family goes to school and after school is able to cater for themselves. As we've already hinted, 50% of the oil company's share, GNPC's share of whatever is given to them will be taken to support this program. 60%, that's 60, of the 70% of the oil revenue that goes into the annual budget funding amount. There's something called the annual budget funding amount, which goes into the government's general budget. 60% of that from the oil revenue will be taken to support this process. And then 40% of Get Fund. Get Fund will be emphasized in different ways so that 40% can be invested in SHS. And therefore, this is a carefully thought through policy. This is the first time a Ghanaian politician is putting a costed program on the table for discussion. And this is something that Ghanaians can all empathize with and realize that we need. We'll take our last break. When we come back, you can join us on the phone lines.